Hello, I featured these two professional grade video cameras recently on YouTube. People have said though they'd like to see some more of the footage from them. So today I'm setting out to do that. Right, what we have here is a Sony Digital Betacam standard definition tape based camcorder. So that records onto a digital Betacam tape, and this much smaller, lighter JVC, also tape based, records onto mini DV tape in the HDV format. But it does so in a slightly unusual resolution of 720p. It's unusual for HDV anyway. It's only implemented by JVC in that resolution. Now, I've done this in two parts, and I'll tell you, this was inspired actually a little bit by a recent video done by Usagi Electric, where he comes from somewhere like Texas, really hot and quite dry, and he did a visit to Japan and took some footage of an area where there's some woods and a stream flowing through it, and he said it was stunningly beautiful. And it made me realise that, well, we're very lucky here, because with about a 2-minute walk from here you get a very similar sort of place where there's a nice woods and stream running through it. So I've taken both cameras to that area, and then a few days later there was a sort of a trade show also within walking distance of here, where they featured lots of animals and events and things for children and engines and motors and classic cars and things like that. So I took them along to that as well. And we can see, one thing we can see is I may have all the gear, but I still have no idea. So I didn't do a great job of setting the cameras up. You can tell me how I could have done a better job. The two issues I had mainly were video grain, especially on the digital Betacam, and both of them I had a bit of trouble keeping the exposure really under control, and had a lot of material that was overexposed. Also, additionally, I had some technical issues with the digital Betacam. So let's look through some of this footage and see what you think, and some polite advice on how to do better would be very welcome. Right, let's get stuck in. So here are some of the first shots I took with the digital Betacam in and around the woods and river area near where I live. And the first thing that might be obvious is that I had the exposure wrong. I had the gain set too high, and the camera was warning me of this. It had a warning light, but I didn't know what the warning was telling me. Might have been nice if it said, this is a warning because, but it didn't. So I had the gain set to non-zero, as a result of which I made the images noisier than they needed to be, and the exposure was super critical. The setting the aperture was really, really critical. So that was user error. So you will see at times here, for example, that I've got the water overexposed. Another thing in general about these shots is all of them had been taken with the Sony microphone that it came with, which is fine for things like interviews and what have you, but it might have been nice if we'd had stereo sound with two proper microphones. So yeah, the water's overexposed here. These, if you look carefully, you can see they're called pond skippers or pond skaters, common pond skater I think, walking around on the water in the still part of the river. And then these beautiful damselflies, and they were actually this colour, sort of quite a strong blue colour. I did have a bit of a colour problem, that I think that a lot of these images were too green, and I've slightly adjusted that using the colour grading features within DaVinci Resolve. But the biggest problem by far, as you can see, is overexposure, where scenes like this get whited out. And I was being continuously distracted by this warning light in the viewfinder, so I kept on doubting that it was recording anything at all. But it was only a warning, it wasn't an error message. We come to error messages later. Well, more than warnings, because during this entire shot, this whole shoot event here, the digital Betacam worked fine, apart from it was giving me that warning. Now here I zoom out a little bit or zoom in. Okay, when I'm zoomed out, you can see the problem with, on the left hand side, the cover on the front of the lens got in the way, the lens hood. But when I zoomed further forward, that left the scene. So that lens hood Perhaps it shouldn't have been fitted when you're zoomed out a long way. When I zoomed in a long way, like here, I was really struggling to hold the camera still enough. I didn't have a tripod with me, and anyway I don't have a proper tripod mount to set the centre of gravity properly on this camera. So as I got further and further zoomed along, it became more challenging to hold it still. Here we've got some nice shots around a river area, and here it was quite hard to find something to focus on. You can't focus on water terribly well. Just trying to find some sort of focal length and get that focus right. It's a continuous challenge with professional grade camera, that you're always having to think about focus and exposure. So that's towards now the end of the shots I have with the digital Betacam in the woods and river area. So next we'll move on to the JVC. I'll show you that in a moment. Here we go. So similar shots with the JVC HDV camera. Now we have some advantages here, that it's progressive anyway, and there's a button on it, full auto, and you can just switch to full auto for a moment and it'll set the exposure correctly. So it kind of makes life a little bit easier. But full auto does not mean autofocus. There's no autofocus on it, so you've still got to think about focus a lot. But I think in general I got better results at the JVC, despite the fact that when I was using it, the Sony Betacam Digibeta felt like a better camera in every possible way. In the end, the results I think from the JVC HDV came out better. Look at the pond skaters, or pond skippers, or whatever they're called. They looked nicer on this, didn't they? I was able to use a bit more zoom as well. There's more zoom available on the JVC, albeit that can be a double-edged sword because it becomes harder and harder to hold. So this microphone is still mono, so we're not getting the benefit of beautiful stereo sound, and of course there's only 2 channels available on the JVC, so I couldn't have had, for example, a long microphone plus stereo microphones using up 3 potential channels on the audio recording. The JVC only has 2 audio channels for recording. But I think in general the results came out better on this JVC HDV machine. Now these are shots, like I say, we did in the woods and around the river with the HDV. But the next thing was I went to a show, a Yelpton show, and we'll get some shots of that shortly. And I'll start with the shots from the JVC HDV deck. So let's just wait for the woods material to finish. Oh yeah, another long shot. A lot of zoom, becomes really, really hard to hold without a tripod, and there was no excuse. I really could have mounted this on a tripod. Nice pictures though, aren't they? They are nice. I actually quite like it. Again, would have benefited from stereo sound. Right, now we move over to the Yelpton show. We were suffering from a wind problem, as you can hear. So that's our cars there. Come back to those later. So I took some shots here of various motors. One of the reasons being we could see what the movement looks like. And I think the progressive video from the JVC will be significantly better than the interlaced and then de-interlaced from the digital Betacam. In general, I think I got better results here from the JVC, but I still managed to overexpose it sometimes, and really I should have adjusted the neutral density filter. Given it was such a bright day, I'd have been better off adjusting the neutral density filter to reduce the exposure level. But in general, I think these results came out quite well. I'd zoom in on a subject like this, big engine, and then zoom out, focus, and then take the shot. The manufacturer, I think, of this engine became part of Rolls-Royce later. There were some shots here of these motorbikes doing incredible stunts. They did actually manage to survive the day. Incredible. Now here's some shots from the Digital Betacam at the same event. You can see again it had problems with the lens hood. That's my new car, the Toyota Celica, and my slightly older car, the Hillman Avenger. They were in the classic car section. Again, I took some shots of some of these engines so we can see what movement looks like, and I think that, you know, you get to feel the lens and the quality of the camera. It certainly felt like a better camcorder, but oh, I do wish I'd taken the lens hood off, don't you? Because that really messed up the shots on the left-hand side. Similar sort of trick, of course. I would zoom in, focus, and then zoom out. And I mean, I think these shots came out really nice. Some of them were really good. And it felt like a better camera to use. You know, when I was using the Digital Betacam, it felt better. I don't know how you can describe it. It just felt more natural to use, even though the results may have been better really on the JVC. I had this complete overexposure issue again, didn't I? With the Digital Betacam, I seem to suffer from that. So way too much brightness in the background there on the fields in the background, and even the foreground looks too bright really. And again we get to see the motorbikes, and now of course again with the Digital Betacam I have the exposure all over the place, so really these shots, you know, they wouldn't be usable, would they, because they're completely washed out in the highlights. And here we have sheep, which again I probably somewhat overexposed the sheep as well. So I didn't have a lot of luck with the Digital Betacam on some of these shots, and I really should have used the neutral density filter on such a bright day. Right, let's see if we can work out where I went wrong with these cameras. So starting with this one because it's the easiest, I think. Put that to one side. So it was straightforward really. I should probably have selected ND filter 1, I think, and then the aperture wouldn't have had to be so stopped down that it was very close to being fully closed, causing it to be difficult to set the aperture correctly. The other thing of note was, you remember I had to glue the rear focus ring into place because the original screw that was supposed to be in here had been driven in too hard and snapped the rear focus ring, so I just couldn't secure it. I tried gluing it and things, it just wasn't going to happen. I tried to repair it, but it wasn't going to be repairable, so I glued that into place. It's not ideal, but it does seem to have worked okay insofar as when I was outdoors I was able to zoom in, focus, zoom out, and it stayed in focus. So yes, just that probably is all I would have needed to do to set things up properly. The gain was set to low on here, that was correct. So not too many mistakes made with that one, and it did give reasonable results. This was the full auto switch, so what I would sometimes do is flick full auto on at the beginning of my shot, and that would set the exposure for me, so I didn't have to mess about with that too much. But you could also have done it through this. There's manual and auto exposure, and I think what you can do is if you press a button, I think maybe if you press that button it does the exposure for you as well, so I could have done it that way. Something I did notice is that when it was in full auto mode it messed up the sound slightly because I wanted a switch setting here which was channel 1 input channel 1 and channel 2 input also channel 1. But interestingly, when you switch that to full auto, it just went to stereo mode. What's this little thing here? Is that just a cover? Oh, there's a memory card. An SD card, 16 megabytes, that's tiny. I don't think that's for taking photographs. I suspect that's for holding configuration files. Right, so, oh yeah, there's something here. Did I mention this in a previous thing? There's a little cover here for the controls when you're in VTR mode. So you press a button here to switch between cam and VTR, and when you're in VTR mode the deck functions work. But this little cover is supposed to have a clip there that grips with a small hole, and that plastic clip is snapped off because it's just the plastic's just too thin. So instead of sliding it and opening it, somebody just yanked it open and ripped the plastic off, and it's probably rolling around somewhere inside now. I think the only deck function you can operate without being in cam mode, without being in VTR mode, is eject. I believe also you can even do that when it's off. Let's try it. So the machine's off now, and yes, you can eject even when the machine is off. And indeed, put the tape back in. Doesn't sound like it's laced though. Right, so that's that one. This was running on this quite cheap microphone I bought from an eBay seller, which seems to work quite well actually. I'm not unhappy with that microphone at all. The instructions for that microphone weren't great, and it was described, at least in one part of the instructions, as stereo. But it's not, it's balanced mono, isn't it? That couldn't be a stereo mic, could it? Right, let's put that one aside. Oh yes, it's got focus assist, and I've never really quite understood that. It doesn't seem to assist at all. There's no motor drive on this focus system. If this camera was operated remotely, then you could get a motor drive attachment somewhere that would drive the focusing. But as a standalone camera, there's no motor drive for focus, so there's no sort of quick focus. All that does is put kind of an image. I think it changes something to lines or stripes or something that makes it look like they're the bits that are in focus. So I didn't find that terribly helpful at all, but maybe that's because I'm an idiot. Right, so what I did like on this really nice. That's really nice. iCup does quite a good, nice comfortable feel to it. But what I had noticed is light does tend to reflect around in here, so you get light from the viewfinder bouncing around inside the viewfinder sort of lens arrangement, which is just a little bit cheap and cheerful. To make it use less space when you're finished with it, I think you undo that and slide that in, so we can put it away like that. Right, let's go over to the Sony Digital Betacam. I'm not sure this is the whole of the original eyepiece. It feels like there's something slightly missing from here on this eyepiece, like there should be some more rubber component there. It sort of works like that, but it just feels like it's not quite complete. Now then, on this one, let me see if I can demonstrate one of the things that was confusing me the first day I was using this. There's an orange light in there. Let's switch it on. Right, that's looking into the viewfinder, and there's not a lot to see at the moment. So if I wanted a bit more gain, because it's rather dark, as it is indeed here, there's a switch here, and I can increase the gain. But in doing so, another light illuminates on the left-hand side on the bottom. So if I switch it back off, you see it goes out. So that's a warning light, and it's warning me that we have not got the standard gain setting, so we're obviously going to get increased noise, which indeed we did. So on that first day, part of the noise was caused by my having that gain setting incorrectly set. Right, that was one mistake, but I'd got that solved by the second day. Oh look, there's similar function here for shutting off the deck functions. Is much better made on this Sony. Right, so what did I have wrong with the lens setup? There's two wheels here. One's for the colour temperature and one's neutral density. But the reason I didn't twiddle that was because I was scared if I fiddled with it that I'd mess up the colour temperature. So being scared to fiddle with these controls, I think, caused me to have too little light going into this one. This will also have a back focus setting, and I'm not sure where it is. There's a couple of things I've not quite fathomed out on this around here. That M there, I'm not quite sure what all of that does. ×1 and ×2 internal focus, it says. So though I was being put off by that caution indicator, there was actually a much bigger problem I was getting, and I need to, if it's still doing it, show you that. Okay, I'm on a blank section of tape, and I'm just going to put it into record mode. Easy way to do that, I think, is just hit this button here on the front. Well, I've got to get it in camera. That one there. It flashes the red light to tell us we're about to start recording. And I'm just going to record some colour bars. And you know, it's behaving absolutely perfectly. But when I was making these recordings at the Yelmton show, which was admittedly on this tape, so I'll swap it over in a moment, I was getting a warning light, so that was flashing, warning me that it may not be recording anything. But when I checked the footage, it was recording, but I just got spooked out by continuously having those lights flash and the red lights in the viewfinder flashing. But of course now it works fine. I'll swap over to the other tape. Again on the blank section, so I should just be able to record colour bars on there. That's correct. But what was happening is it would go on red like that, and then it would start flashing red again, and the warning light on the side here would start flashing. But it's not doing that now, is it? No, it's absolutely fine. So what was happening? My guess is that the machine was, I think it's got separate record and play heads, and I think it does a read back of its own recording on the play heads, confidence heads, and it saw a bad playback and was warning me that it wasn't getting a good playback signal, potentially just because the heads were contaminated. I didn't have a head cleaner tape. I don't have a digital Betacam head cleaner tape to hand, and of course this won't work on a Betacam SP1. I think these grooves here will prevent you from inserting a Betacam SP head cleaner tape, or indeed a Betamax one for that matter. So maybe it just had dirty heads on the day and they're magically cleaned themselves up, or maybe it was because it was a very hot day and there was some technical issue with the camera that was stopping it from playing back properly. But the recordings were fine, so it was warning me about something, but not anything necessarily real. While I'm here, I want to show you what's in this Betacam box, and I'll tell you it's nothing to do with Betacam. Aha. It's a very, very small Hillman Avenger, and the reason that that was on my dashboard at the Yelmton show is that there's a little history behind this. This car, this model, was made by a model maker who did a lot of the Wallace and Gromit models, and he needed a Hillman Avenger to measure up for making this model, and that was my actual car. So though it's red and mine is white, and though the number plate doesn't match, that is actually a miniature of my actual car. So that's quite precious, that, to me. Well, if you've enjoyed us looking at these cameras, now maybe I've learned a little bit and maybe you can teach me some more. Let me know if you'd like me to try again next year with a little bit more knowledge to see if we can get better results out of these cameras at the same event next year. In the meantime, I will be doing more audio and video technology content in due course, but not for the next few weeks. I've got something else going on, so I'll see you sometime around mid-September. Bye for now. we bought a little gadget for Alex's new car. It goes from USB power to audio out, and in here is a Bluetooth receiver. So we thought we could play music out of his phone and get it in nice quality stereo for his car. But it didn't work out because, for one thing, this thing's only mono, but it seems to have 2 channels. It sounded absolutely awful. You put your head in the middle of the speakers and it sounded out of phase. Sure enough, give it a 1 kHz signal and the 2 channels are out of phase. It does make you wonder, why do they make garbage like this? And I'll hazard a guess that the Bluetooth receiver in here, the chip, is stereo, but they've made it mono just to save on a handful of components between the chip and the connectors. It's just terrible, isn't it?